My lords, today I bring you a report on an entity that loves you. This creature loves you more than anything or anyone has ever loved you. Its love is as constant as gravity, and its desire is timeless. I speak of course of the entity codenamed the Worm, and in this report I shall delve into all that we know of the Worm and its ever-growing love for you. However, my lords, today is slightly different. It appears that we have been infiltrated by the Megacorps. For today's report on the Worm is sponsored by Scopely, the creators of Star Trek Fleet Command. Space is the final frontier, but with Star Trek Fleet Command, you're the captain. Step into the captain's chair and build your own space station, assemble a powerful fleet, and forge your path through a vast galaxy. Players can navigate the galaxy, discovering planets, space stations, and mysterious anomalies. Story-driven missions immerse commanders in gripping narratives inspired by Star Trek lore. Will you choose to ally with the United Federation of Planets? Will you pledge loyalty to the Klingon Empire, or scheme with the Romulans? The choice, of course, is yours. If this interests you, then please download Star Trek Fleet Command on PC or mobile using the link or the QR code in the description or the pinned comment, and take command of your own interstellar adventure. As a bonus, please use the promo code Voyager30 and you'll unlock everyone's favourite chef, Neelix.
The Riker's team is aboard, sir. Helm, warp 1, engage!
With that message from our friendly Megacorp over, back to the report at hand. The Worm is in brief an extra-dimensional horror of tremendous power. It exists in another dimension, but appears to be able to break into our plane of existence on occasion and feed on the populace of the physical realm. The Worm's psionic capabilities are so powerful that it can call to us from outside of this dimension, and when in our own realm, can manifest claws across star systems to crush and tear at our vessels. The first encounter we had with the Worm was via the event designated the Broken Gate, which incidentally, of all of the events that we have witnessed throughout the galaxy, is a personal favourite of mine. Dr. Weir aboard the science vessel Event Horizon reports. Dr. Weir and his team had reported unusual findings from a moon on the second planet in the Yump system, and thus investigated further. Upon investigating the Yump system, we discovered ancient ruins dating back several millennia. At first we thought that they were of Arassian design, however we quickly ruled this out. We discovered what appeared to be at first a large open-air dome, but as excavation progressed, it became clear that we had found a large, derelict city. A colossal gate blocked our progress deeper into the city. However, as it appeared to be ringed in design, the team speculated that the populace was divided by social class, with each layer holding a specific denomination of citizen. We presume at this point, the closer to the centre of the city you were, the more affluent you must be. However, this was not yet confirmed. It did not take long before one of my team found alien remains in subterranean ruins under a broken concrete floor. After the first corpse was found, more soon followed, and as we pushed further around the first ring of the city, we found it to be a tomb with bodies sprawled across the streets, in homes, or in some cases even hanging from signs and street lamps. It was currently unclear who or what killed them, but it made for very unpleasant viewing. Demolition teams provided the power we required to punch through the first gate, allowing us entry to the second ring. Whereas the first ring mainly consisted of ramshackle dwellings of the outcast and destitute, the second ring has far more in common with how we would expect life to be on a human colony. Clearly some urban planning had gone into the design of this sector. There were several open squares that we had identified, which we assumed to be forums or marketplaces, or perhaps somewhere to hold sporting events. The quality of the housing is clearly above that of the first ring, and has survived in a much better state, given the thousands of years that have passed since the city was occupied. As with our experience on the first ring, we soon started to find unusual alien remains. It seems that the aliens died in a largely similar manner to those of the aliens in the first ring. Given our inability to get through the first gate without substantial demolitions, it is likely that these aliens fought amongst themselves or died from disease, as it would seem, unless the attacker was of the immaterial and could walk through walls, how indeed did they get through the gate? In any case, We have identified the gate to the next ring, and we shall need to call on the demolition team once again. I'm pleased to report that the third gate has been breached. We entered the third ring in the same manner as the second. A small group of Marines went through first, and the science team, myself included, followed shortly behind. We had stepped over the threshold for all of 2 minutes before Dr. Simmons, a colleague of mine, brutally attacked Dr. Jenkins. Jenkins, it would appear, was dead before he even hit the ground. Simmons had gone quite literally for the throat, tearing his jugular vein open with a bite to the neck. It is completely unclear what happened to Simmons, a generally well thought of and experienced science officer. The man was totally insensible after the fact, seemingly unable to string a coherent sentence together, let alone explain his actions. Both Simmons and the deceased Jenkins have been put in cryo storage pending further investigation and autopsy. It's a shame to lose 2 good men in such a senseless event, but nevertheless, we press on. Now that we have entered the third ring, it is obvious that it is significantly smaller than the previous 2. It is likely the last before we reach the centre of the dome. The gate blocking our path to the centre was quickly identified, and this one was far more elaborate in design than the previous 2, and far more highly decorated. Similar to the difference between Ring 1 and Ring 2, the third ring was clearly occupied by the wealthiest of the society. The housing buildings were far larger, with significantly more space between properties. However, there was little of interest beyond the field of xenoarchaeology, and we pressed on with a view to crack the fourth gate in what we hoped would show us whatever is at the centre of this magnificent city. It is at this point, my lords, that we no longer have the literal report of Dr. Weir. We only have video and audio recordings from the accompanying archaeology drones designed to document proceedings. As the Doctor and his team opened the final gate, some sort of psionic wave seemed to hit the group. The Marines and scientists alike fell to the ground, collapsing as if they had been brutally beaten, sprawling in agony. This appeared to last approximately 11 minutes and 6 seconds before some of the men and women went limp. We assume unconsciousness or death, but 4 members of the team began to stand. However, those who stood did not appear to be in control of themselves. They did not speak to one another or attempt communication in any manner. The 4 survivors of the ordeal slowly shuffled to what appeared to be a large open temple, with a massive altar at its centre. The temple walls were covered in huge diagrams of different star systems, some of which were repeated, and one of which was the Yump system. We watched as the survivors continued to shuffle towards the altar, and as the drone followed in and we got closer, the altar appears to be in fact a device or some sort of machine. The group started to tinker with the machine, and it wasn't really clear from the recording precisely what they were doing, but not long after they began their work, in unison, their heads flew back and released a deafening shriek before they fell to the ground, lifeless. The science vessel Event Horizon had remained in orbit of the Moon during the days of the ongoing excavation. At approximately 0300, they reported a significant gravitational disturbance coming from the Moon below. The second officer on board, when the science team below could not be contacted, ordered that the ship disembark to a safe distance. A smart decision, as what happened next was truly horrific. An Eldritch horror, a demon from another dimension appeared from within the Moon, tearing it apart in the process, creating a small singularity from which this creature appeared to be stuck. This demon, in some sort of psionic manner, spoke to the crew of the Event Horizon. It called itself the Elder One and demanded that we bow down and grovel before it. It offered to grant protection and wisdom to us, stating that if we declined, we would be completely annihilated. I'm extremely pleased to announce that the crew of the Event Horizon did not submit to the beast's will, and before they were destroyed, they were able to transmit a distress signal, along with the information detailed by Dr. Weir and the events up to this point. Fortunately for the Commonwealth, Strike Team Kraken received the distress call and, led by the experienced Fleet Commander Admiral Hood aboard the Titan-class vessel Enigma, Admiral Hood reacted as one would expect of a man of his rank. he ordered his fleet to make haste for the Ump system in order to engage this psychic horror. Upon arrival, Strike Team Kraken was immediately set upon. The horror was able to target our fleet from vast distances, greater than even the Perdition beam upon the Enigma. It spat its purple energy towards the fleet, making short work of the battleship Pendragon and cruiser Glory, instantly penetrating their shields and dissolving their armour. The strike craft that we launched was set upon by incorporeal claws, appearing and disappearing before we could target them, but slicing craft in two nevertheless. Fortunately, the energy spat by the horror seemed to drain it, as it took significant time between shots, allowing the fleet to close in. Once in range, and given that the beast was still trapped in its portal between dimensions, the tachyon lancers and neutron launchers made short work of the monster, blasting it apart. Its various limbs torn off and set adrift in space. The beast had a lively death throw, but ultimately proved that even entities from other dimensions can die to Commonwealth guns. Upon the horror's death, the portal closed around its corpse, slicing what remained of the beast in two. Fortunately, a large portion of the Elder One's corpse was relatively undamaged, and Admiral Hood collected it with the view to transport it to a dedicated Xeno research facility on Vesper, where the corpse could be further studied. My lords, that ends the Broken Gate log, but we are able to pick up in the immediate aftermath of these events. The next section of events have been designated as Horrific Inverse Mass, and as the name suggests, not all goes well. Captain Miller reports he was assigned to escorting the corpse back to the Xeno research facility on Vesper. And he reports, shortly after collection and storage of the Elder One's corpse, the journey back to Vesper began in earnest. The scientists and the crew aboard the transport quickly began to report strange activity and apprehension regarding our cargo. I too began to experience what I can only describe as bizarre and terrifying visions. We would see windows into worlds which depicted pure pain, and whispers of destruction appeared throughout the vessel. It was clear and obvious that the mass of the dimensional horror was to blame, and I rightfully worry what will happen when we bring the corpse back to the Vesper 9 research facility. At least, I can leave it for someone else to deal with. Despite the apprehension of some of the higher-ups who had been made aware of the problem, we were told to continue on. Apparently this research opportunity was simply too great to give up. Upon arrival on Vesper 9, it was deemed prudent by the governor that a parade should be held, celebrating the Commonwealth's victory over the Beast from the Void. The weather on Vesper 9 was unnaturally marvellous, as it should perhaps, considering that our atmospheric control system was put on overdrive for the day. Every city on the planet was filled to capacity, and there were still tourist ships orbiting the planet just to be a part of the great day. The Grand Parade travelled through each settlement in turn and was greeted by thousands of cheering Commonwealth citizens. Every city capable of requisitioning a holo display in our empire was also overflowing with spectators for the grand hologram rebroadcast. As the centrepiece of the parade, the corpse reached Vesper 9's capital city. People were already talking about making today a yearly dimensional horror-inspired holiday. The mega corporations had already begun rolling out TV, movies, games, and toys of the beast. It quickly turned into a children's cuddly toy. If only we understood our hubris. A copy of the remains of the horror was placed in a specialized display in the center of the capital city, alongside other great symbols of our people, such as our first colony ship and various flags of conquered worlds. We hoped it would inspire generations to come. Today of all days, the Commonwealth stood united as one. The real corpse, however, was transported to our Xeno research facility on the other side of the planet. I admit I was slightly irritated when I was asked to stay planetside for several more months. I had serious concerns about this corpse, and how right that would turn out to be. Research on the corpse began in earnest. The energy anomalies produced by it yielded results quickly. Apparently, the energies involved in the creation of the portals that we had seen aboard the ship were unlike any that humans had ever encountered, and I'm told our understanding of physics was accelerating dramatically. I awoke today to news breaking. What was at first only rumours quickly was confirmed. The dimensional horror's corpse has begun to tear holes in the planet's reality. It appears to be opening rifts into another world. The phenomenon quickly breached any containment measures we could put around it, and now appears to be expanding across the planet. Any contact with this other dimension, even inadvertently, through the lens of an observation device for example, causes intense distress. The science teams are worried that this will spread even further, but promise, with just a little bit more time, they can unlock the secrets of this dimension. The reports continue. Vesper 9 is being ripped apart from the inside as the corpse, now officially designated the horrific inverse mass, remains sequestered upon it. While the breakthroughs that we have had in the fields of science have been nothing less than revolutionary, its strain on the planet has been immense. A worryingly few amount of scientists believe that they can still stabilize the situation and control the energy pulsating from the mass, but the majority believe that the point of no return is fast approaching. The records suggest that a meeting of the highest science directors across the planet occurred. They voted that they had come too far to see their experiment end, and would strive to be able to control the immense energy that was being produced. Captain Miller's report continues. The sky is gone. It is not covered by clouds. It has been replaced by pure void, pure darkness. All that remains of Vesper 9 is patches of dirt in an ocean of nothingness. Everyone left on the planet is suffering pure agony for every instant that passes. We have bought as much time as we could for the transport ships. Our scientists have failed. We have failed. And I fear our people will pay dearly for our arrogance. A distorted and disturbed voice echoed from the world beyond. It said simply, "Return to me." We have, my lords, one final log entry from Captain Miller. It appears that Vesper 9 was ripped apart by a gigantic dimensional portal from which another dimensional horror appeared. The resulting psionic shockwave tore not through only the ships in system, but the planetary bodies as well, destroying them utterly. Astrophysics data shows that all that remains of Vesper 9 is a black hole. The real question is what happened to this dimensional horror, as it is no longer there, and we have no idea where it's gone. Both of these events give us insight into the creature that we call the Worm. It is clearly an entity of tremendous power from another realm, a different plane of existence. The final reference I have for you is a report designated simply as the Horizon Signal. We have identified a sealed container on a recently surveyed tomb world, buried many kilometers deep into the planet's crust. The container held within it records detailing the history of the long-dead empire who referred to themselves as the Vel-Thorak. They appear to have made a pact with a being of the void that they refer to as the Worm. Their account is broken into several different events, starting with an initial contact signal and ending with the release of this worm. I shall recite their logs for you now, my lords. First contact. An alert communications officer identified what appeared to be a faint signal, almost lost in the gamma-ray flashes from the black hole. They were faint, but unmistakably artificial. This raised intriguing possibilities for our science teams. Science officer Xenthrax reported that the signal was unexpectedly easy to decipher, but nevertheless the team spent a considerable amount of time confirming that it wasn't a hoax. It is a repeating, half-coherent message in the Vel-Thorak language. It reads a bit like a poem. It repeats the phrases, "Gravity is desire," and "Time is sight." It encodes coordinates near the black hole, and it ends with a dedication by name to Xenthrax, who adds dispassionately that they have confirmed the signal has been radiating into interstellar space before their birth. In fact, the signal may predate our entire civilization. Xenthrax and her ship have been dispatched to the black hole system, designated as Kalor, with immediate effect. As Xenthrax and her science ship, the Banshee, approached the coordinates specified by the signal, they began to report spatial distortions and a curious lensing effect, alongside a rich stream of valuable data. Then, the transmission became distorted, and what happened next has been analysed exhaustively. The excitement in Science Officer Zenthrix's voice turns to fear as the ship's hull struggles under increasingly exotic conditions. The ship triggered a distress call, where we hear Zenthrix cry out, "The worm." Then, silence, and all transmissions end. No trace of the Banshee was ever found, no further transmissions, no debris, and the space at those coordinates is utterly free of distortion. But the data that they sent back advanced our physics research dramatically, perhaps to the point where it was even worth their lives. We've continued to monitor the black hole in the Kalor system, and it has become active once again. Just as before, a looping signal flickers in the darkness at the edge of normal space, but this time there's an acoustic message encoded in the signal. It sounds very much like the lost scientist Zenthrax's voice, and it says, "What was, shall be, and what shall be, was." Then, at the same coordinates as the first signal, the coordinates where we lost the Banshee, what the media has dramatically christened the exit point, finally, the message utters a name: Drexelath. Drexelath is our leading physics researcher, who volunteered immediately to go and investigate the signal. He knew Zenthrix well, and he hoped to get her back. This time, the science ship was running fully automated. Drexelath was the only crew member aboard, and as the ship approached the exit point, the telemetry stream filled up with fascinating data. Once again, space would flex and gravity would uncoil. Drexelath read off the headline data, echoing the telemetry. He was commendably calm, remaining professional throughout, and it took a little while for anyone to realise that something is peculiar about the timing. Drexelath is no longer echoing the data, he's predicting it. The telemetry disagrees, but only for a few seconds until it catches up. The monitoring team is just reporting the prediction interval is increasing when Drexelath says, "I'm through." "It's dark," he adds, "but that's not a problem. We can live in the dark." I never thought of that. But of course, we can live here forever, if the worm will only wait for us. At that time, the signal cut out, and the ship disappeared from our team's sensors. We've attempted to reproduce conditions that approximate those around the black hole, and we found that the fragments that we recover cycle between states, in ways that should not be possible. It is as if time is oscillating. We can derive energy from this, although there are worrying changes to local spacetime. Months have now passed, and the black hole in Kalor has once again become active. This time, it appears to have upped its game. Once again, the transmission includes the exit point's coordinates. It is also signed with the private comm keys of both Zenthrax and Drexelath, but this time, it's a generative text program written in a Velthorak program language that creates what appears to be love poems. Love poems now directed to Thyrax, our head of engineering. Frankly, they're not very good love poems, but it is, our scientists agree, quite difficult to generate love poems procedurally, and extremely unusual for a black hole to send love poems at all. Thyrax, although fully aware of the fate of the previous two vessels, volunteered to go. Although despite volunteering, they were quite morbid about it. "This will be the end of me," Thyrax said at the briefing before the launch. "I know I won't come back from this, but I think I always knew that this would happen. Whatever is in that black hole has been waiting for us for a very long time. I think it's been waiting for me since before I was born." Once again, the single pilot ship approached the exit point, and once again, space boiled like a fever. Again, our sensor arrays soak up the fascinating data, but this time, Thyrax is silent. The telemetry becomes intermittent, and then it too is silent. The ship reached the exit point. The conditions around it returned to normal. Nothing happened. "Nothing," the monitoring team muttered furiously. "The ship is different. In fact, It's a different ship. It's Zenthrax's vessel, lost all these years past, now drifting away from the exit point. A salvage team boarded it quickly and found it pristine, but empty. No trace of the crew and no signs of violence. But there's a journal entry in Zenthrax's name titled, "What Was, Will Be." Our scientists review it nervously. "Impossible," one says. "I hope so," says another. The ship has been renamed the Foundling and has been returned to service. The black hole, dead or sleeping, there's nothing at all. Ever again. But the small group of scientists that trawled through the returned science vessel have begun research on a special project, which they're referring to as Omega Theory. We are unsure how this will progress. Years have passed since those events, but today an odd report crossed my desk. An observation station monitoring a pre-FTL society reported the rise of an unusual minority religious artistic movement who call themselves the Coils of God. Primitive mechanical clocks are considered holy but ritually destroyed after a year's operation. The worm and serpent analogues of the planets have been protected from harm. Time coils and priests say it is a labyrinth. However, the most important thing to come out of this is the message. These priests chant, "What was will be, and what will be was." Exactly the same message that we heard from the black hole. We continue to observe, and the Coils of God cult is growing across this primitive species with unusual speed. It can be found in every city across the planet, and it's fostering a series of lengthy ceremonies conducted by citizens in every walk of life. It seems that their entire species have taken to it with an unlikely enthusiasm. The rich adopt elaborate circular dances for their celebrations. The poor daub complex looping signals on their doors. Even children in the playground are chanting about the circular nature of time. Of course, primitives do primitive things, but this is incredibly odd. Our anthropologists continue to be fascinated by the complexity of these ceremonies. They hypothesize secret communication channels, but then suddenly, all observational data from the planet was cut off. Reports from our satellites and survey craft flyovers confirmed that there was no activity on the planet at all. No vehicles moving, no emissions, no thermal signatures, no signs of life at all. It would appear that the entire population on the planet, including the anthropology team on the observation station, was absent, with all the business of a sudden but not violent exit. Meals were left unfinished, pets unfed, and the occasional dwelling aflame from an unattended stove. Gravitational anomalies were recorded at the assumed time of departure in almost every street. The loop chalk signals of the coil, or witness. But we have no idea what happened here. In other news, the science vessel Foundling, the one that returned to us from the black hole, and now put back into service, has located a small, minimally powered artificial object that appears to be broadcasting a looping signal at local range. These sorts of things usually turn out to be escape pods, and this does look like one of those, but it's been out there an awfully long time. When the crew cracked it open, carefully observing proper quarantine procedures, they found ancient remains preserved by the sterile pod environment. This was not unusual so far, but the captain of the Founding indicates that they did not expect to find Velthrak words. What was, will be, and what will be, was, daubed on the wall in the bodily fluids of the pod's occupant, who the crew are now wryly referring to as the Messenger. They add that there are some equally unexpected atomical similarities between the Messenger species and our own. We establish quickly that the escape pod was some kind of commercially available knockoff, common in the previous phase of galactic civilization. We discovered no new technologies or other insights from it. The remains of the Messenger, however, are another matter. It is unmistakably an ancestor or variant of our species. Perhaps we have cousins out there, or perhaps we were subject to genetic manipulation by a precursor race. Scientist Vale is requesting permission to conduct more extensive research. Vale, quickly managed to reconstruct the messenger species. It is feebler than ours, but has significantly improved cognitive abilities. There is some confusion about whether we are the source species and the messenger a modified version, or whether the messenger was our ancestor. It is slightly embarrassing to imagine that we might be descended from such a weak species, but Vale is firmly of that opinion. Indeed, he considers the loss of cognitive abilities a tragedy, so much so that Vale has undergone retroviral treatment to alter his own physiology to that of the messengers. He insists this will equip him much better to continue his work. Vale has now recreated the genetic heritage of the messenger species. Without stopping to ask anyone, he also created a highly contagious retroviral agent, which now stalks our worlds. Under its influence, our primary species falls into a coma and emerges a day later as the messenger species. This is, it is fair to say, causing some excitement. Not long after Vale's disease was released upon us and we gained more cognitive ability, we reached the endgame. We finally finished our research project into the understanding of Omega theory, and we constructed an Omega alignment. What we discovered was incredible. There is a consciousness outside time and space. It is a labyrinth, a tangle of desire and desperation. Our remote ancestors knew it as the loop, the worm in waiting. We have met it out there, where the void is tormented by gravity. It seems to have taken a personal interest in us. There are mathematical proofs that it loves us. But love to the worm is not like love to anything that subsists in ordinary space. With all that we have learned, we think it may be possible to use our Omega alignment to open up an access route, an entry point, if you will, for the worm to manifest in our own home system. The worm is fond of beginnings, and this will be ours. We wonder what consequences this would have, but have yet to find anyone who's prepared to commit to an answer. Immortality, perhaps, or apocalypse. But certainly we will learn a great deal. We believe the worm loves us, and perhaps we could love the worm. The project is complete, the accelerators online, the power network of a dozen cities is diverted to the wake of the pseudo-singularity at the heart of the Omega alignment. Space shudders like a wind-racked cloth. Our star, for a heart-stopping moment, dims and brightens. A shadow coils in its heart. The worm is here. It unfolds like origami. Across the system, sensors shut down in abject disbelief as the incomprehensible data of its arrival surges through them. On the homeworld, our subjects scream and cower as they feel its attention turned upon them, and upon us. It presents a wordless question, or rather, we have become aware of this question that was always what it was asking us, every time we encountered it. The worm loves us. It will always love us, and thus it always has. It winds around the hot heart of our star. It winds around every infinitesimal loop of genetic information. It provokes a shuddering series of cataclysms in the planetary crust of our homeworld, but when our star grows cold, that cataclysm will warm us. We understand so much more. We will always be what we were going to be, wound tight in the love of the worm. And that, my lords, ends the tale of the Velthorak people, and their love affair with this beast from the void. Obviously, given how we found their home system is nothing but tomb worlds and a black hole, the encounter did not go well for them. Fleet-wide communications have gone out stressing extreme caution regarding any signals emanating from black hole systems. Commanders and captains across the fleet have been taught to report any oddities regarding space, time, and gravity immediately. Let this be a lesson, my lords. We must not allow ourselves to be swayed by the alien, no matter the promise of power that may be offered. Thanks for watching, folks. Remember to use the Voyager 30 promo code if you download Star Trek Fleet Command to get access to Neelix. And as ever, if you want to hear more from me, please click the video on screen now.